Hey everybody, and welcome back to another edition of the Open Forum podcast. Today we have with us Scott Newgent. Scott is a trans male who transitioned, I want to say, I think around 7 years ago, if I'm not
Mhm.
mistaken. Yeah. And he is also an activist with TRE Voices.org. And this is an organization that is looking at, if I'm saying it right, the prevention almost of childhood transitioning, and to give more information as to why that isn't the best idea, to put it mildly. And Scott also has a bit of a backstory around his transitioning and his journey as well. So, look, Scott, 2 minutes from me or 20 seconds from me. Why don't you take it away? Give us a little bit of a background into who you are and what brought you on this journey that you're on today.
Sure. TRE Voices is I call it a single note org, which means that I have one single um, one single mission, which is stop the childhood medical transition worldwide. It's not for kids, so it's a single note is what it is, and there's some many reasons to that. I did transition about 7 years ago, and through the process of being a parent at the age that they're pushing kids to do this, just being in a perspective of having done this, running an organization, dealing with a lot of older transgender people like myself, who unfortunately a lot of them feel the way that I do, even some more severe than I do, some less. But very rarely do I meet a transgender person that's over 35 years old that is medically transitioned, that is for children medically transitioned, unless they're like, Dr. Marcy Bowers, who makes a living off of it. But other than that, it's hard for me to find somebody that is like, yep, I'm totally for it. And there's reasons for it. And it's not being bigotry or transphobic. There's some reasons why it's just not for kids. So,
Yeah. Before we do go down that pathway into children, into medically transitioning, can you maybe give us a bit of a background into what brought you down this path into advocating to stop childhood transitions with your own history with this?
yeah, I medically transitioned. Of course, you don't realize it when you're doing it, but I medically transitioned due to like internalized homophobia is really what it comes down to. And as far as we have come with accepting homosexuality, we have not come far enough. And there are other sides to accepting homosexuality too much. It doesn't, I mean, it doesn't need to be in our school systems. Nobody needs to talk about it. It's, we've gone from one side to the other without truly accepting the homosexual community. Now we've gone over to the side where we've got, the unicorn farts and the glitter bombs in schools, which I don't understand why anybody can't connect the fact that we're talking about sexuality and children should not be in the conversation at all. Um, I don't know. I don't know how we got there, but for me, it was internalized homophobia. I was in love with and she was desperately in love with me, a Catholic, over the top religious person who could not accept their sexuality, and for me, I had never dated a man, so I had always had internalized homophobia, but it was just one thing after another where, oh my God, you get up and check the doors just like a man does, or you do this, or you do that. And I never looked like a man. I was never butch. Um, but my personality has always been kind of in your face, very alpha. And so over time, I kind of started to think, well, God, maybe I am, maybe I am born in the wrong body. And then, at a vulnerable place, being a businesswoman and 42 years old, I was kind of a ball busting businesswoman. I was not by any means, I've never been quiet. And, going to the first therapy session with a transgender woman because I felt, comfortable with it. And during that conversation, she said to me, how long have you been dressing like a man? And I remember looking at myself and in a very vulnerable place. And I mean, I had slacks on. I never dressed butch at work. I mean, I wasn't overtly feminine, but I still had makeup on and earrings and all this kind of stuff. And at that vulnerable place, I remember, and it's embarrassing to say this, but I remember kind of looking down and then looking up and going, I mean, just being completely mortified that I had gotten 42 years of my life, and I was not told that I was born in the wrong body. And I felt embarrassed. I was like, oh my God. I remember looking up going, I guess all my life. And, just doing, and then, going to a gynecologist that wanted me to have a surgery and said something like, you got your jawline or something. It's, have you ever been tested for unisex? Oh, we don't have to do that. And, at a very vulnerable place where for me, being who I was, being a lesbian, being the fact that I never really fit in anywhere. I was, an overtly feminine, very dominant woman. I mean, I come from a family that's dripping femininity and, models and stuff like that. And so I had to do that. I went to finishing school twice because I failed the first time. And, so I knew how to act, how everybody said or look, but the internalized of who I was always very aggressive. And it was like, anybody tries to challenge me, oh, motherfucker, I'm going to tear you up now. And that was me my whole life. So that process kind of goes in your brain a little bit and you're kind of like, God, this fits, this fits. And, so, for me, it was internalized homophobia. Now, we do know with studies that 67% of the kids, the girls that were medically transitioning, would grow up to be, lesbians, and 43% of the males would grow up to be gay. So this is modernized, homophobia. So I would, and here's what I say. If 50% of people that medically transitioned, even 51, said unequivocally on the other side, man, this has made my life so much easier, I wouldn't be as much of an advocate. I wouldn't. But there's not very many of those people that come to the end of it and say, wow, that really made my life so much better. And the reason why we don't hear that is the process that it takes to medically transition is anywhere from 5 to 7 years. So it's a big process. You want it to be correct here at the beginning. And then as the time goes by, every step, when I start taking testosterone, I'll feel better. Nope, don't feel better, but I still need top surgery. When I get top surgery, I'm going to feel better. Nope. When people stop mispronouncing me, I'll feel better. And it goes down to the end. And then at that end mark, where it's supposed to be this life-saving thing, a lot of people, and it does help some people. I don't think it's life-saving. I think that that's a bit dramatic. I do think it helps some people walk through life a little bit easier. But at the end of it, if you get down to the end of it and you go, well, that didn't fix fucking thing, it's kind of embarrassing, right? So you kind of internalize that and you kind of swallow that. And I did that for a while before I started in activism.
Okay. Now, there's a lot there. There's a lot to unpack there. The internalized homophobia, the gender affirming almost immediately with your first session with your transgender therapist. There's also the possibility of a medical professional taking advantage of the fact that she obviously sees that you're vulnerable, she or he. And then there's also the statistics you gave of the people who, if they don't transition, they would have grown up to be gay or lesbian, and the usage of pronouns. But before we go there, one of the other big things that happened to you during your transition is it didn't go swimmingly from the off. Can you maybe talk to us a little bit there? Because one of the things that I've heard you say a lot, and it's something that I didn't know, and I was speaking to a doctor recently who also wasn't aware of this now, given that they're not in plastics or anything, they're a cardiologist. So what they would know, would be anyone's guess, really. But the fact that these operations for transitioning are experimental.
All of them, except for top surgery. Everything is. Puberty blockers, hormones. The only thing that's not is top surgery. All bottom surgery is. Cross-sex hormones, we don't have studies on those long-term. Those are experimental. Puberty blockers are the experimental, although we're seeing We're seeing kids that take these have early onset osteoporosis. They have mental, their brain development is, I mean, the shit that's coming out about puberty blockers, it absolutely flabbergasts me that we don't have parents rioting, seriously, with like pitchforks and like fires, like throwing them in. I mean, parents are going to be so fucking pissed off when they figure out, they're going to be so mad.
But I don't
what's
know
happening.
if parents will realize, because of the fact that they think they're doing a favor for their child.
They are.
It's better. One of the things that they're told is it's better to have a trans child than a dead child. As horrible as
bullshit.
It is. Yeah.
Bullshit.
But then the parents will automatically think that, you know, if the doctor's recommending this, the person in the white coat, it must be safe. So, okay, I'm gonna let the kids do this. I'm gonna let the doctor give my child this. So they probably don't even put two and two together that their child has.
Have you studied what happened with OxyContin? How OxyContin came out with, basically because it was delayed. There was delayed release of it, that it was not addictive. And then when it started to throw, addictive signs for patients, then OxyContin said, well, you just got to give them more. And so they started giving them more and more and more, until they finally realized that, oh shit, this is actually worse than heroin. And we had this, epidemic, Lupron, which was sued. It's the most, scandalous medical thing in history. Well, what people don't know is that Lupron, who's the developer of puberty blockers, was sued after these guys, and they were deemed a criminal enterprise in 2003. They were forced to pay $874 million for false advertising and bribery. This is a company that's saying, yep, we're good to go. It's good to go. And the truth is that they haven't done studies. They don't want to do studies, because as soon as they do studies, there is no doctor in the world that will sign on puberty blockers saying that this is safe. No doctor will, and they know that. So we have parents that are being told that their children are going to commit suicide, when in fact, the truth is the only long-term study that was ever done on medically transitioned adults, which was from 1973 to 2003. You can't make this shit up. Highest suicidal ideation is 7 to 10 years after. Remember I told you that process where you get to the end of it and you go, well, that didn't fix the fucking thing. That's when you're most suicidal. So these children that have suicidal ideation, that we're dosing them with experimental doses of cross-sex hormones, puberty blockers, that's causing osteoporosis, causing brain development. There's a documentary in Sweden where, backs aren't fusing together, and there's 15-year-olds that are walking like this that are not going to live. I mean, when I say that parents are going to have pitchforks and fire walking down the street, throwing shit into medical offices, that's going to happen when people figure out what's going on. And then we have the gay community that is not standing up and going, hey, wait a second, this is modern conversion therapy. So what we're all doing is we're all think that we're loving these kids, but what we're doing is we're taking kids that don't fit. We're removing the time frame where they get a thick skin of learning how to work in society. We're telling that something's wrong with them, then we can fix them. And then 7 to 10 years later, when it doesn't work, we say, oops, sorry. And then we have the other side that's lifting them up as detrans, and then they realize they can't detrans. And this is a whole, portion of our society that is fucked, because nobody wants to stand up and say, this is cosmetic surgery. It does help some people. It's experimental. But this is by no means for children.
No. And again, want to get to that. But I don't think people realize, as we said, it's all experimental, but I don't think people realize what the potential side effects are of the surgery when it does go wrong. Now, it doesn't go wrong for everybody.
Are you talking about the bottom surgery, or are you talking about hormones? Because that's a whole different thing. We can go there.
Your bottom surgery.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So there are 3 different types, right?
There's more than 3. Or
so for 3. Female to male.
Yeah, there's actually 4.
Okay.
There's phalloplasty. There's Centurion. There's something else. I don't know. but I had a centurion before that and then I had a phalloplasty. A phalloplasty is the one that is I think it should be illegal. I don't think that it should be legal in any part of the world, anywhere. No decent surgeon will do it because there's a 67% complication rate. They're just not going to do it. And we're not talking about complications like, you have an extra, infection. I'll get infections for the rest of my life until the antibiotics don't work anymore. And then it'll kill me. You have infections, you have urinary tracts. A lot of people have urinary tract infections for life. A lot of people have, it induced a pulmonary embolism and a stress heart attack. I have a handicapped arm. I've got, I had a ligament coming out through it. I had an infection. I had 6 inches of hair on the inside of my urethra because the dumb shit used the wrong side of the skin. If you think about like an ingrown hair on your face, have you ever had one of those?
Yeah.
Think of that on the inside of your urethra, just growing and changing and pain for 17 months. So here's the kicker with it. Here's the real kicker is I had 8 attorneys in Texas talk to me at the beginning of my case. All of them were really excited about taking my case, flat out medical malpractice. After they studied and came back to me, usually about 2 weeks later, we can't take your case. And finally, towards the end of one, I said, why is nobody taking my case? Everybody seems to think I'm, this wonderful thing, and now I can't. And they say, well, here's the thing. That procedure is experimental. We're in the state of Texas. The state of Texas has a tort reform act, which means this. If you bring a medical malpractice case, you have to have a baseline at which to compare the treatment that you got to what treatment you should have gotten. If that's not there, then the attorneys have to create that baseline, which costs millions of dollars. And then they have to say, hey, we hired all the doctors and scientists and all that kind of stuff. Here's the baseline. Here's what they did to Scott. So see, it didn't fall. And nobody wants to take that on because it's millions of dollars to take that on. On top of, everybody thinks that you're transphobic and you've got the unicorn farts and the glitter moms attacking you. If you're, nobody wants to take it. This is not worth it. So you have, like my surgeon who had 9 medical malpractice cases in California, in San Francisco, and moved from there to Texas, where they have a tort reform act, which last year our governor took $2.4 million from gender clinics. Our governor, who's an evangelical, who's against homosexuals, took another $250,000 check 4 days before bills were on the floor that would stop the medicalization of children. And he told everybody that we should love everybody and kicked those off. And then 6 months later, when he saw me nipping in on his fucking heels, he comes out and says, oh, you know what? Medical transition is child abuse. Well, dipshit, it was child abuse when you took $2.4 million. And what you just said, everybody that thinks you're a hero for saying that, all your evangelicals, don't know that you stopped this many kids from getting that surgery. But the only thing you did was you get to point back on that and go, hey, look, I said that. I was it. Everybody knows this is not going to last. Everybody's just trying to make as much money as possible. So people have no clue how deep this is. None.
It's baffling to think that through a loophole, this experimental procedure can just be dished out almost without any repercussions.
Yeah, life-saving.
And exactly, and called life-saving for people. Now, you were 41 years old, right? When you made the decision. 41? Yeah. You're a fully grown adult when you came to making that decision. And I think that's a hell of a different position than a teenager, or even in some instances, a prepubescent child being given the decision being put in their hands to transition sometimes. Now, can you talk to us as to why that can be so dangerous? You've already mentioned the usage of hormone blockers can cause early onset osteoporosis. These things have also been associated with decreased growth for hearts and lungs and decreased brain development.
Also psychosis, basically mood disorders and psychosis on the females it actually makes mental health worse. People don't realize that either. And those are all studies. Those are all studies that nobody talks about. On my website, there's the 10 top complications of medical transitioning children. And it's some pretty harsh stuff. It's pretty harsh stuff. We have 24-year-olds that have early onset osteoporosis. We have trans men that are having heart attacks at 25. We've got, trans men are having pulmonary embolism. And the thing is that I'm not against medical transitioning. What I'm against is having it be a child's decision, number one. Number two, feeding people that want to do it unicorn farts and glitter bombs and not telling them the truth. And if that makes me transphobic, I'm transphobic. That's fine. But we are medically transitioning a generation of gay and lesbians, unfortunately. And if you really want to put something in your pipe and smoke it, there's two parts of society that is fighting the medicalization of children hard. The first are feminists, which they're okay with homosexuals, of course, but evangelicals. So for the first time in history, we have the evangelical side of our community that is fighting for gay and lesbians. And they don't really know that, but I'm so thankful that they are. So
that's a big help, actually, because that's, that is an unexpected one. But
and you know what? If with every evangelical that I've talked to, every Christian that I've talked to, that I've told that to, they are perfectly aware of what they're doing and they're okay with it. I mean, this whole idea that we have to separate, we have to draw these lines in the sand and say that you're a Christian, and that means you're the devil, and that you're a homosexual, and that means you're a devil, and you're a feminist, so that means you're a devil. The truth is that there's no human being on the face of the earth that agrees with another human being 100%. We have got to start adulting better. And what that means is I have to be able to sit across from an evangelical who's one of my good friends, Michael Brown, and say that, Michael, I think that you're fucked about homosexuality. And he says, well, I think you're wrong about this. And then we go, okay, let's move on. How's that wrong?
Being a grown-up.
It's called adulting better, right?
Yeah.
No, instead, we have lines in the sand that says that because I'm gay, I cannot talk to you. And feminists going, because you transition, I cannot talk to you. And then, we go over here to conservatives and go, I cannot talk to you because you're a liberal and you like guns. Wait a second. I don't. And the fact is that if we all got into a room together, every person that you think that you hate, you would figure out that, hey, you know what? They have some things that make them think the way that they do. And I kind of understand it now because I understand them. There's not as much hate and separation. It's our society that does that. But to stop the medicalization of children, we have to adult better.
I think most everybody can agree that doing something for the well-being and the welfare of children goes above all else.
Yeah.
That your political ideations or religious beliefs or your
doesn't matter
sexual preferences, none of that matters.
Doesn't matter
above the well-being, the welfare of children. And it's almost baffling that there are so many people that are promoting the medical transitioning of children who probably do not understand.
They don't get it. They don't understand.
It actually is what it is that's being done to a child at the base level, at the chemical level within their brain, like you said, with the psychosis, within their physiological makeup, the things that are occurring there. And this is it. Like you said, you're not against transitioning. It's the simple fact of don't do it to kids. There's a big difference.
And tell people the truth. Tell people the truth and hold and make and do studies on this stuff and listen to the hard stuff and know the hard stuff and have somebody understand that it doesn't change gender. It's a modified version. It's an illusion. It's plastic surgery. I mean, until we have women that just got boob jobs that are running down the street naked, trying to convince everybody that the boobs that they got during surgery were their real boobs. That's what's happening. And if you put that in perspective, it's kind of idiotic, right? But somehow, delusional, mentally ill people, and I transitioned. I'm not the poster child for mental health. I'll say that, but at least I know reality. We have people that are crazy motherfuckers that we have news people with mics going, oh, a woman is what a woman is. That's amazing. because nobody wants to stand up and go, "Yep, sorry, that's a unicorn fart. That's foul, unicorn fart." Nobody wants to say anything. I mean, in our school, we've got drag shows, which is like, drag show is a very sexual. It's
Basically burlesque.
It's an adult thing. It's, you know, it's fun as hell to go to. I love going to drag shows. It's not for kids. And why if I was a straight man, a straight woman, or whatever, would have a problem with that, makes me homophobic, is fucked. You know, I don't understand why we can't connect those dots. That, oh, how about this? You start talking to my kid about sexuality in school, I'll be on the 5 o'clock news. And I'm a lesbian trans man. I'll flip the fuck out. Nobody has the right to talk to my kids about sexuality. Nobody has the right to talk to my kids about transgender. Nobody has the right to talk to my kids about religion. Those are off the books. Religion is separated from school. So should homosexuality. So should transgenderism. Don't talk about this stuff to children in schools. It's wrong. It's not homophobic. It's wrong. Kids aren't supposed to be having sex anyway. So why are we talking to them about sex in school? Why in your country do you have mermaids that's handing out packets to 5-year-olds saying, if you feel this way, you might be transgender, and coming over trying to do the same thing? Why the fuck? Who benefits from that?
I'm still trying to work that one out myself. Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. If nothing else changed, if the same amount of kids medically transition today do for the next 20 years, and 20 years, 18 to 22% of the population will be transgender and in need of cross-sex hormones for life. I don't care if your government pays for it or not. Somebody has to supply it. Lupron's making the money, $1.3 million over a lifetime for kids. And that doesn't include any kind of complications. And trust me, there are a lot.
The other thing there, next to the amount of money and all the cross-sex hormones, is it's also a generation that are sterile, right?
True, very true.
That's the other thing that people don't realize. Like you mentioned, there are those people that do detransition, and the detransitioning isn't a complete 360 reversal.
That's another thing. That's another thing. We have a portion of society that wants everybody's right in fighting. You know, the transgender side wants to right fight and go, and all they do is lift up the people that transition really well. See, you can't tell. They pass. And that seems to be the you know, that's the, whoo, they pass. And then you have over here, they're lifting up the detransitioners and go, oh, they pass. And in the middle, they don't care about these people. So these people medically transitioned, vulnerable, medically transitioned, went over this side, realized it didn't help anything. And now they're getting lifted up by another community saying you can detrans. And then what happens when the lights go off with detrans people? Then you have detrans people. Then you have girls, you know, that sound like boys, that look like boys, that use there's no amount of estrogen that's going to take off. Testosterone adds, estrogen blocks. So for the rest of their life, do they have to tell everybody, yeah, I'm actually a woman? At what point are we going to do what's right for that person and saying, hey, you know what? Here's the reality. You were on hormones for 24 months. These are the things that are not going to change. If you detransition, here's the things that can change. Now you make that decision. There is no good answer to this. Once you medically, hormones are permanent, period. End of story. I mean, if I stopped taking testosterone for about 18 months. I didn't start looking like a female again. You know, so at some point you have to go, well, it is what it is. So I get people going, why don't you detrans? I go, I haven't taken testosterone for 18 months. How do I look? Do I look female still? There's a reality, right?
Yeah. Don't get me wrong. It's probably, this is pure ignorance on my part, but I would never have expected you to revert back to looking like a female or whatever. But the stopping of testosterone, it's had virtually no effect.
None.
Oh, wow.
I couldn't take it while I was sick because I couldn't work. I couldn't afford it. I couldn't get to the doctor. I could barely go to work. So I stopped it for about 18 months. I have a full hysterectomy. I have to be on I have to be on hormones for the rest of my life, either E or T. You choose.
Jeez.
I've removed everything. So when you do that, I'm, even though, even if I wanted to detrans, I would still be given the pharmaceuticals, money for estrogen.
For one or the other. Yeah. For the
So,
estrogen.
we're unicorn farting the detransitioners too. And here's what I don't think a lot of people know. I mean, even Abigail Schreier and I remember we had a conversation about the people that we are concerned with the most, detransitioners, because they've been fed a lie and then they're fed another lie. And they're never going to be who they are, instead of just sitting down and going, listen, you took cross-sex hormones for 2 years. You're never, ever going to look and sound fully like a woman again. So here's your options. What's best for you? Instead of lifting that person as some kind of right fighter. Look, see, I was right. See, they passed. They detrans good. Or look, they transitioned to the other sex. Look, the other sex. What about the middle? What about the person? What about the person?
This is the other thing, right? It feels like there is a manipulation of vulnerable people and
bingo,
setting them into these groups, whether it's the pro-transing group, whether it's the detransitioning group, whatever it is, so that they can, at the end of the day, we're all human. We all want to fit in. We all want to find a place that for us is cozy. When we're at school, like you said, there's a period in school where we have to develop thick skin. I was bullied at school, and it helped me create a much thicker skin.
Exactly.
And I know a lot of people who have the same story, and some who don't have good stories at the end of bullying. But it is one of those things, developing that thick skin. Now, you also find during that development the place where you fit in, the place where you find your people. And it might not be people in the same school as you. In this day and age, people are going to find chat rooms or whatever. But it seems like more and more people are finding chat rooms that tell them, because they like a certain color, that's not generally a boy color or a girl color, that must mean they're trans. And then they're slowly getting sucked into this group of people that do put a blanket around them and tell them that it's okay.
It's okay. You're okay. They're basically telling people that we have a prescription for you not fitting in. Some of the I've had conversations with a lot of detrans people. And the reason why I think that they reach out to me is because I do not judge. I have this thing that I do with all of them. And believe me, I've talked to a lot of them, and who say that they want to transition back, or they want to detransition, and they want to transition back. And there's very few therapists out there to help them. I tried to guide them to wonderful therapists, like Inspired Teen or Gen Spec, that kind of stuff that actually talk to people, and try to figure out what's right for the person, and adulting better, right? Because it's much easier to say, hey, yeah, detrans, everything's going to be okay, because that means that the section of the community that I belong to is right. So I'm gonna support you here. I'm gonna support you here. But if you decide to transition back, then I'm gonna drop you. I'm gonna hate you on the way. Instead of just going, listen, sweetie, you've taken hormones for 2 years. Who you were going to be is never going to be the same. So you transitioning back without going through a process of really figuring out what's happening to you. Take 6 months, and every day write on the calendar, today I would transition back. Today I would not transition back. Today, and write a little sentence. Why? In 6 months, you'll figure out where you're supposed to be. Now that 6 months is uncomfortable, but at the end of it, you're going to come to a decision that's going to be a decision that you're likely to live with. Now, I didn't do that at 41. I sure in the hell wish I would have found a therapist to do that. That would have kind of dug a little bit deeper. Like, this is a little bit deeper here. Okay, wait a second. So you're in love with a Catholic woman whose family is homophobic. Do you think that might have something to do with it? I don't know. Maybe it would. Did you think that maybe, her denying her homosexual, her lesbianism is, and thinking that you're a man makes her think that she's not gay? Yeah, maybe it does. I mean, isn't that loving somebody? I mean, we're at a place in society where instant affirmation on everything is where it comes from. I mean, I got teenage kids, I listen to them all the time on their calls, and I've got nieces and nephews and this and that. And it seems like they're all obsessed with, am I trans? Am I bisexual? Am I asexual? Am I this? And am I that? And I just walk by and go, well, you guys or to have sex with anybody. So you're nothing. Right now, you're a kid. What the hell are you talking about this shit for? Because what you think you are, and when it gets down to it, when you're 20 years old, getting it on, you might go, yeah, I thought it was, it wasn't. But right now, it doesn't matter. Who cares?
Absolutely. And I think they're lucky to have someone like yourself in the picture who can help guide it and provide a non-judgmental view on it, because everyone around them will be providing that judgment as to whether or not they fit in the trans community, and they're going to be accepted by those people, their friends that say that they're trans, because it's the hip thing at the moment. It's the in vogue thing at the moment, and it's the place where people are finding acceptance, and for them to have someone around them who can give both the good and the bad, who can.
What I say to parents who say that they have kids that have transgender kids, I always tell them, you know what, don't make it such a big deal. Don't make it a black or white thing. Well, dad, mom, I'm transgender. Okay. What do you want for dinner? And listen, medical transition does help some people. I'm not going to say it doesn't. It's not a lot, but we need to do our homework on that. We need to figure out the goods and the bads, and you need to write down the goods and the bads. And if you can't find any bads about medical transitioning, it means you're not mature enough, because there's always bads and goods to every decision. So we'll do that for the next couple of years. We'll sit down, write the goods and the bads. And then it's not my decision. It's your decision. This is a huge thing. I'm not going to, tell you who to marry or what career to go into, or I'm not going to tell you, to transition genders, whatever. But I can sure guide you. And let's do the homework now. Okay. And if they come and not bring any negatives, go, well, that shows me that you're not ready to make this decision. There's no negatives, because there's always negatives. And then, having them go through that and just going, wow, I didn't know that this is, experimental. I didn't know this is that. But we have parents that are like, oh, you're transgender? Okay, let's go to the gender clinic. And then we have the gender clinic that's making all this money off of everything. And they're going, yep, you're trans. And the parents are going, oh, they're trans. Instead of just going, okay, well, great. Mom, dad, I'm bisexual. Great. You know what my dad said when I told him I was a lesbian? He was perfect. My dad was like a huge male, Irish male.
Alpha male, kind of.
Alpha male. And I think it was 19. I was like, I was crying, Dad, I think I'm a lesbian. My dad goes, no shit, Kelly. What are you telling me something you don't think I know? I mean, I don't know why anybody's attracted to men. They're disgusting. Of course you're attracted to women. Who wouldn't be? I'm actually surprised there are women that are attracted to men. That's weird. And that was it.
Beautiful.
And I was like, okay. And then, I would go through the process that a lot of gay people go through. I'd come in and go, Dad, I think I'm bisexual. Making dinner. Well, that's good. Means you got a better chance of a date on Saturday night. Your odds go up. Why are we making such a big deal out of things that people can figure out on their own? Nobody needs to be pushed anywhere. You need to love somebody with acceptance and let them find who they are. But it's not parents' jobs. So when my dad did that, what is that? That was like, oh, okay, well, I guess I'm a lesbian then. And then I made this big announcement, Dad, I'm bisexual. All right, well, that's good. You got a better chance of a date on Saturday night. And I started laughing. I go, I never thought about it like that, Dad. Yeah, men are disgusting though, but go for it.
Jeez, that's wonderful. If more people were like that, we wouldn't need to have the conversation of even coming out. It would just be par for the course.
Oh, my dad was great.
Yeah,
and I had a hard time.
Beautiful.
I had a hard time being gay, and I don't. Everybody has different things, and he used to go with like lesbian parties with me, like lesbian pool parties, because I was like 19. He'd talk to all the lesbians. He loved the girls, loved them, until about a year later, I was like, Dad, I really don't want you to come to any more lesbian pool parties with me. And he'd be like, oh, what about Sarah? Sarah and Terry broke up. I don't know if she's gonna be okay. And that was my dad. He was like, he used to drive in my truck that had like a gay sticker on it. And one time, he was getting flirted with some guy. He didn't even know he was getting flirted with. He was going to wash my truck, and this guy was like, hello, and stuff like that. My sister said, they're doing that because Kelly's got a gay sticker on her truck, and they think you're a gay man. And he goes, oh. So now, anytime any guys would be like, hello, boys. I mean, why are we all so fucked up about this stuff? I mean, I just don't get it. I wish more people was like my dad.
With that said, then you're now a few years past the point. You also had some issues with your transitioning. You've also had some time to reflect as well. Would you make the same decision?
No, no, I wouldn't have transitioned at all. No, no, no. There's so many medical complications with it. If I could snap my fingers, I'd go back to that Kelly and I would say, you know what? You are an alpha female. You're a badass. Um, Go with that and be okay with that. But I made a decision. And finally, I made a grown up decision, which is, basically I've done this. It's an acceptance place. I'm going to do whatever I need to do for my health. And whether that is taking estrogen or taking testosterone, it's really nobody's business what I'm doing and what I'm not doing. But for me, I don't feel like I'm a transgender man. I don't feel like I'm a woman. I just feel like I'm a human being. At this point, I'm just a human being that loves the shit out of my kids. That's who I am.
Okay. How long did it take you to realize that that was how you felt? Because, like you say, that this is a long journey that
Yes, it
someone
is.
goes through. This isn't something that's done over the course of a couple months, a couple surgeries, Bob's your uncle, and you're done. This is a proper long-term plan that you have to go through, and you also help a lot of people through this as well, through your organization as well.
Mm-hmm.
How long did it take for you to come to where you are now and your level of acceptance?
I'm still not done. I don't think we're done growing, right? We're not done growing at all. Medical transition has made me dig deep for lots of things. And it's made me realize things that I probably never would have realized if I didn't medically transition, that I am grateful for. I do understand where men come from a little bit more, understanding that, when you swap hormones, it does change the way you think, and being included in things that I wasn't included in, with males that didn't know that I was transgender, and listening to things and understanding from a different point of view. I mean, I think that the one thing that really messed me up was the time when I realized that who I hated before I transitioned was who I would have been if I was born male. And that really opened me up to being able to love and understand other people. And what I mean by that is, when people know that you're gay, you're not able to be in certain circumstances. When people think or thought that I was a straight man, I got to be in circles that I was not included with before. And I realized that if my circumstances were different, if I was born into a certain kind of family, if I was born into a religious family or male or this and that the people that I hated, I would have been a straight white Christian evangelical. I mean, I would have been horrible homophobic. It's just who I am, like a black and white thing. And so being born lesbian has made me realize that, hey, you know what? Homosexuality is ingrained. It is who it is. It is who you are. We need to accept it, but it's nothing to promote. It's nothing to talk to about kids. And so when you realize who you are is just a product of where you were born, who you were born to, and the experiences that you have, along with the genetic makeup of your mental health and all that kind of stuff, is who you are. If I went in there and rearranged it, you would be a completely different person. So for me, I'm able now to speak with people that I thought I used to hate. And that has been an experience I wouldn't change for that. That has kind of been and it's brought in a human side to all people. There are very few evil people in the world, psychopaths. There are some, but most people we're just trying to muddle along with life. We're just trying to love our kids, and we're trying to, just figure out life. There's not as many differences as we think they are,
what you said earlier about getting people with all these different thoughts and beliefs all in the same room, I think we'd find that we have a lot more things that we agree on than we disagree on, for sure.
Yep.
Coming back to something that you said way earlier on in the podcast, and also loops back into what you've just said there now, the idea of transitioning. And again, I can't emphasize this enough. For some people, it is the thing that they need. Absolutely.
I do believe it helps some people. Yes.
Yes, 100%. I've met people that feel so much better afterwards, and that is a beautiful thing.
Absolutely.
But what you said there about the internalized homophobia, how big an element do you think that is? Because in a way, it feels like you're getting a lot of people who otherwise would have grown up to be a homosexual or a lesbian, and you're just flipping them around so that they are quote unquote straight. Mm-hmm. But just for the sake of transitioning them, people who would have otherwise grown up to be okay, because again, from the studies, there's 80%, and I think 84% was another study in Canada, of people who suffer from gender dysphoria during their teenage years will settle down if given therapy with the sort of wait and watch kind of approach, would settle down in their normal biological gender, and would grow up to be gay or lesbian, what have you. But it feels like we're getting rid of those people in a way. Correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm saying something absolutely stupid, please.
No, I don't think you're saying anything stupid. I have friends that I often say who believe completely different than I do about homosexuality and about religion. I'm not a Christian, but I always say that we need each other. We need each other, because when one part of that society goes away, the other one goes to the extreme. I mean, we're seeing it with the gay community right now, right? We are completely out of line. The gay community right now is completely, totally, utterly out of line. They're more concerned with fetish flags, with having likes to have sex this way, that way, this way, that way, and making sure that it's like a recruiting thing we have right now with gay people, and everybody's so scared of the unicorn farts and the glitter bombs, kind of like how it was about 30 years ago with the evangelicals, right? Woo! There's a connection there. Woo! Well, what happened with the evangelicals? Finally, the shit rose to the top, and then they lost all power. Evangelicals have absolutely no power. As soon as they say anything homosexual, gone. They can't say anything, even if they're right about something about transitioning. Now we have the gay and lesbian community that has too much power, and the shit is rising to the top. We have, your Stonewall, the LGBTQ. Yeah. They were getting ready to sign on bankruptcy in 2015 before they signed on to mermaids. Next year, 32% year over year growth with an org. Bankruptcy, 32% year over year. Wait, what happened there? They started promoting transgenderism. So you have to connect those dots. Right now in the gay community, the shit is rising to the top. All I'm trying to do, I'm trying to save the gay community from getting so much hate that there are people that in the gay community that said, listen, what we're doing to kids is wrong. Get out of schools. Religion shouldn't be there. Sexuality shouldn't be in schools. Get the fuck out. There are boundaries. The LGBTQ is a soft place to fall for adults. We have no business being around kids. None.
This brings me to a question that I think is going to be quite simple for you to answer then. And I ask it because I have friends that are teachers, and I hear some of the things that they're now being faced with, and almost an inability to approach it in any other way than affirmation. What role should schools play?
None.
Should schools affirm?
None. It's none of their business. Who my child wants to have sex with is none of your fucking business. What gender my child thinks that they are in is none of your fucking business.
So then should schools use preferred pronouns or things like
No,
that?
no, no, we should not promote something that is a delusion. When somebody starts to look and sound like the sex that they want to become, that's when those pronouns start to change, and those will change naturally. But if you are medically transitioning for pronouns, you're doing it for the wrong reason. You're doing it for the wrong reason. If we start to affirm children with gender pronouns, the percentage that they will medically transition skyrockets. Skyrockets. And here's the thing, I have it on my site. Here's the reason why you don't do that. Probably about 15 years ago, I drove an hour and a half back and forth to work in sales. I started listening to this salesperson, and he said, long story short, basically that your brain is a computer. It only believes what you tell it. And if you start telling it where you want it to go, it can't do things like, like health things. Basically, if you're sick and you need cancer medicine, you got to take the cancer medicine. But other than that, if you say that you want to be the best salesperson in this organization, if you want to do this number, like the Jim Carrey thing, I'm going to make $10 million. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And you say that to yourself, not asking, not saying I might, looking in the mirror going, I'm going to be the best salesperson in the entire world. I did that for a year and a half. I sold so much. I sold through the roof with that kind of stuff. You can ask my partner. I mean, I used to scream in the shower, I'm the best salesperson in the world. My subconscious started to create those opportunities to make me that salesperson. And I programmed my brain to do that. When you start calling people opposite pronouns, children, vulnerable children, opposite pronouns, you are creating something within their brain that you have no business or no right to do. The reality is we are born male and female. That will not change. Now, you can grow up and create an illusion of the opposite sex with plastic surgery. It is not life-saving. It does help some people. But if you start programming children at 10 years old that if they're a girl, they're now a boy, you're programming them to believe that. And that fall from grace is not pretty. You're not doing anybody any favors. You're not loving anybody. The only thing that you're doing is you're not standing up to the unicorn farts and the glitter bombs, because to do so would make you be a bigot. Well, fuck that. Be a bigot anyway. Adult anyway. Be a better person anyway.
Sometimes you have to ruffle some feathers to do the right thing, almost.
Yep.
And what you're saying there about the essential programming of children's brains, this is also another thing in the power of language for something like top and bottom surgery, then the usage of pronouns, and then the manipulation of pronouns as well into I think it's up to 87 different sexualities or what have you, or genders, something like that.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah. It's how has this manipulation of language been of use to those who look to propel this idea of gender ideology and transitioning of children before they're able to do quadratic equations already?
I have a question for you. I get questions all the time.
Of course.
Here's my question.
Hopefully I can answer.
Okay. Close your eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Close your eyes. Okay. Now, there's no money tied to this at all. This question, no money. Nobody's going to make any money. Nobody's going to lose any money. There is $0 to this whatsoever. If that's the case, would we be medically transitioning children?
No.
Okay, there you go. Now, why you're not screaming that? Why you're not screaming that? Why everybody else is not screaming that?
But I think that's easy for people like
no,
you and I to understand.
What I just told you gives you no excuse not to scream. None.
I wholeheartedly agree with you.
Yeah.
But I don't think people realize what you said earlier, there's 1.3, was it 1.3 million
1.3 million. Yeah, it's on my
child.
TED complications of medical transition on my site.
People don't realize that because they think, and again, I think there is a portion of society that are pro the transitioning of children because they do think that it's helping kids. They don't realize the damage that's being done. I think there are people that have it with good intentions. They think they're being altruistic, but they just don't understand how much money is involved and that pharmaceutical companies might actually like that money more than they like doing ethical things. Like you said, Lupron, $800+ million fine for
874.
It only gets worse.
Google it.
And that's probably one of many fines that they've had to pay. And this is probably one of the ones that's only come out. The same with Oxycontin, the fact that they had the studies that showed it within their own documents. They knew within internal emails that this stuff is highly addictive, that this stuff does have problems, but that was never given to the general public. Mm-hmm. The general public doesn't know.
I'm not
they don't
talking.
know what
I'm
they
talking.
Don't know.
I'm talking to you now. You know.
I do indeed.
You have a 6-month-old child.
Yep.
Okay. You're a dad now. You have a responsibility. So does everybody else listening to this.
Yep.
Lupron was fined more than Oxycontin was. That's a company that's telling us that it's safe. Once you know this, you have a responsibility. Because when I say that parents are going to be with pitchforks, fire on the end, protesting, that shit is going to happen. I'm telling you, when I was sick and I finally lost it, when I woke up in my own blood and urine and I prayed to God, the universe, or whatever, that I would out this surgery if I was able to get better. I thought it was just this surgery that if I could be here for my kids, I would be here for other people's kids. And that is a promise that's tied to my kids. When I started researching this, I thought it was about the surgery. Every stone that I overturned by moms and dads, people like Fourth Wave and all these people that have outed all these kind of things have been, torn to shit for coming out with stuff. Transgender trend, which is there, all that stuff. They uncovered all this. I didn't uncover anything. This was not me. This was parents. But once you get on there and start reading this stuff, you kind of do that and go, holy shit. And you keep going, you keep going, you keep going. Once the majority of parents get to the holy shit, the shit's going to hit the fan. I'll tell you that. I'll tell you that. Parents are going to be pissed.
They are going to be. And once they do start saying things like this was news in the US a couple months back, the father that it was the child who was molested
James
in
Young.
the children's in the school. In the school, do you remember this one?
Molested?
She was molested in the school by a child who said by a child who said that they were also transgender, by a male student. A male student followed the girl into the toilet and sexually assaulted her. And the father said, "This is what's happened." He was then tackled during the hearing or whatever, and was called a bigot. He was a parent standing up for his daughter. And actually, as it turns out, the school board knew that this had happened with this specific child previously. And this child had moved from another school. Yep. And they hadn't reported it. No, I'll see if I can find it and send it to you later. This was a parent that stood up for his daughter and said, listen, this can't happen. We can't be having kids in the same bathroom like this because it can lead to these things. He was called a bigot. And this is what I think a lot of parents are going to be afraid of in the first instance.
Who cares? Were you trying to get to the point that it's going to be hard?
It's going to be hard for people to come to terms.
Who cares?
I agree. But I think we need to get more people to stand up, right? I think we
That's
can
what I'm
both
trying
agree
to
on
do.
that.
Why do you think I do
Absolutely.
the scream thing? Why do you think I'm so animated? Because I'm trying to wake people up. I knew this a long time ago, that if you think being this vulnerable, doing what I did on that documentary, doing that, if you think that's easy, you got another thing coming. It's hard. It's embarrassing. It's not fun to do. But what is happening to kids will not be shaken loose by a little loose lip. It's not going to be shaken loose by a part of society that's trying to make a point that I'm right. How this is going to be shaken loose is by people that have passion for their children and are speaking on it because they are supposed to speak on it. When you hear what's happening to kids, and if you remain silent, that is being a bigot. That's being a bigot against children. It's being a pussy. You're not a parent if you know this and you don't say anything. If you don't say anything in school systems, that's wrong. You get your scream shirts from me or whatever you do, but you do something. You do something. And the only person that's going to shake that is somebody that has been through it and is a parent, and I've known that. And if you think that this is easy, you got another thing coming. I get hate mail from just about every place. I don't care. What we're doing to kids is wrong. Wrong. Very wrong.
I'm with you. I there's nothing there that I disagree with. I think everyone needs to come together and say that enough is enough. Mm-hmm. And it's not just the idea of medically transitioning kids. It's also what you've said of the idea of putting pronouns into children's heads
sexuality,
as well.
Pronouns.
Putting the sexuality into children's head, because it's now coming in schools in books as well. They're giving books that the newscasters aren't able to show the images in the news cycle because it would get pulled down for child pornography or for pornography. And that is also insane because some of these kids are 10 years old being shown these images. And then you've got something like Desmond is Amazing, a child performing drag for adults. And this sexualization of children is alarming, to say the least, as it's something that they shouldn't be doing at all. When I was 14 years old, I was watching Dragon Ball Z and trying to work out how to turn into a little Super Saiyan. That was it. Yep. There was no thought of me dressing up and doing a show for my parents' friends and expecting them to put £5 notes into my outfit or what.
Yeah, we have to realize these parents that are that out front with their kids. I mean, really step back from that a little bit. And these parents, I'm sorry, like Jazz Jenny's parents and stuff like that, especially her mother, it's not about Jazz. I mean, you can watch that show and in a minute realize that this is about her mother. It's about her mother.
Virtue signaling. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that there's so many moms out there with Munchausen syndrome that we're pushing on it, and we're validating these people instead of saying to Jazz Jenny's mom, listen, what you're doing is wrong. If your child feels this way, that's okay. Don't put her in the spotlight for this or him or whatever. You let him or her decide this as an adult. This is about you. This has nothing to do with your child. And everybody can see that who looks at it objectively. Unfortunately, we're not looking at things objectively because everybody's afraid of being a bigot. There is no child that should be lifted for being transgender. There's no child that should be lifted for being homosexual. There's no child that should be lifted for being straight. There's no child that should be lifted for being bisexual. There shouldn't be children being lifted for sexuality or gender. It's wrong. Why is that okay? And why are Christian people that say that, why are they bigots? And here's my question. Why isn't my community, the gay community, flipping the fuck out? Seriously. Why isn't somebody in the LGBTQ stand up going, we're done with the fetish flags. Done. Get out of schools. You're fired. You're fired. You're fired. You're fired. And you're fucking fired. Okay? Let's do what's right because it's the right thing to do, regardless of who we like to fuck. Why isn't that happening? I'm disappointed with the gay and lesbian community. I'm absolutely flabbergasted, disappointed, absolutely disappointed. Disappointed to be homosexual. I'm embarrassed to be homosexual.
At this point in society, with how much it's been pushed through, how much of an impact do you think that would have? Because I feel like it's taken on a life of its own entirely, almost.
If there was one person in the gay and lesbian community that was influential, that stood up, that was able to get TV stations and other people to stand up, if those leaders in the LGBTQ would stand up and say what I just said and have the balls to say things like, you know, J.K. Rowling, she's right about all of it. And here's the thing that I don't think people realize. Okay, so we have a dad in Texas that is fighting against his child being medically transitioned, James Younger, right? You probably know that. If you don't, the mom wants to transition. It's a little kid, but that's not my story. Here's the story. They lift this poor guy because he's a Christian, that he is some bigot. He's a horrible dad. He's a bigot. He's a homophobic asshole. Well, a lot of people don't realize that he was actually discharged from the Army because he was helping organize a pride parade.
Wow. What a bigot. How dare
He's
he?
a bigot.
Yeah.
You know, he's a bigot because he's like, wait a second, this is experimental procedures on my kid. I think that my ex-wife might, and I'm putting words in his mouth, I don't know if I would think this, she might have little Munchausen's by, you know, this might be about her. I don't know if this is a good idea. When he's with me, he's fine with being a boy. I don't know if this is the best for him. Bigot! He got kicked out of the Army for, you know, helping with the Pride Parade.
It's insane, isn't it?
Yep.
Even when you're trying to do the right thing, even when you're read up on it and you realize that this is experimental,
mm-hmm.
It's exactly what I just said. You're called a bigot and you're cancelled and you're thrown to the wolves.
Almost. Yeah, and I say do it anyways.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do it anyways.
It's not easy.
Adult better.
Exactly for how it's been for you. It's not been easy to come out and say these things on film and have repeating your story multiple times. It can't be easy. It won't be easy, and it probably doesn't get any easier.
It doesn't.
But
no, I can't go back into business sales doing this. I can't. I've actually given up my career for this. People have no idea what.
It's changed your life in more than one way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. What would you say to people who would like to raise more awareness on this subject, on this topic for children?
This is what I say. Find an organization. Mine, whatever organization. Get out there and be a face for it. You know, and do something. I don't care what it is. Donate if you don't want to be doing that. If you don't want to donate, volunteer and start to talk to different school systems. You can't do that. Get a screaming shirt and just wear it. And, you know, I made it so that it's, you know, so other parents can see that have their kids. Oh, okay. There's another parent that maybe believes that this is not a good idea, but do something beyond talking to people that already agree with you, because that's easy to do. It's easy to do. You know, I can talk to people that agree with me at 100%. And that's easy to do. That's nothing. We're talking about kids. Who cares if somebody calls you a bigot? Because here's the truth. Whether you're 30 years old, 20 years old, 40 years old, 50 years old, 60 years old, doesn't matter how old you are. Everything goes back to when you're a child. You've got a 6-month-old baby that's just sleeping right there. Everything that you do with that child as it's developing will be with that child when you are not here anymore. When your child is 70 or 80 years old, he will be able to remember what you did and what you didn't do And if you do not show him the right way, if you do not make decisions for him, even if they're hard, that will affect him. And guess what? It'll affect his kids, your grandkids, your great grandkids. That is a huge responsibility having a child, a huge responsibility. Do the right thing anyway.
Your actions are your legacy.
Exactly.
People think that they're children that are legacy, but actually it's the actions that shape them and the world around them.
My great-grandparents have had effect on my life, and so on and so forth. What effect do you want to have on yours?
I agree. I think that's also, I know that we've gone over a little bit on your time as well. I think that's a nice point for us to end with. Get out there and do something.
I got to go mow my lawn.
Enjoy. Look, Scott, it's been absolutely lovely talking to you. Thank you very much for your time, and I hope to speak to you again soon.
All right, kiss that baby. You go.